Before I get started with this episode, I wanted to tell you about a cool new way to listen to Far From Home if you've got an Amazon Echo smart speaker. It's really easy. Just say,
Alexa, enable the AnyPod skill.
Okay, AnyPod, at your service. Ask me to play a podcast.
Alexa, ask AnyPod to play Far From Home.
Now playing Far From Home podcast.
Hello?
Hi.
Hey, how are you?
Since this is a serialized show, it will automatically start with the first episode for new listeners, but AnyPod also lets you request specific episodes that you want to hear.
Alexa, ask AnyPod to play episode 14 of Far From Home.
Now playing Far From Home podcast. On this episode, 14, From Bad to Worse.
After our car broke down, you can fast forward or rewind, and it will even remember where you left off the last time you were listening. So if you've got an Amazon Echo, make sure you enable the AnyPod skill to improve your podcast listening experience. Okay, now on to the show. By now, it had become a familiar routine. Our car would break down in God knows where, our prospects would look terribly bleak, and we'd begin to abandon all hope. But then, somehow, our luck would change just enough that we'd figure out a way to carry on. It had happened so many times that we'd gotten used to expecting the worst, so my brother and I started making contingency plans for every possible scenario. And with the amount of time we were on the road, we had plenty of time for planning. So it was that we were driving along in eastern Tajikistan after learning that our car might not make it more than another 100 miles when I raised the possibility that our journey might get cut short long before we reached the finish line. How would you feel if it just ended like now and you flew home?
I'd feel defeated for sure, but at the same time, we have done everything that we can. We've put a lot of time and energy and money into the car when it wasn't working to get it back up and running, which still proved to be fruitless, a couple days after we went through that whole ordeal, because now we have issues again.
All the problems we're having now are sort of built into the rules of the Mongol Rally. I mean, they make you get a tiny, old, used car, basically knowing that it's more likely to break down along the way, that you're going to have more problems, and you have to stop to get it fixed. Has that added to the adventure? Have you enjoyed that, or would you prefer to just have a nicer car that wouldn't have had those problems?
I'd prefer to have a nicer car. I mean, you could say, the Palmer Highway would be great in an SUV. At the same time, I really do like the idea that we are using this very small machine that's just not made to do the things we're asking it to do. With that said, for me, breaking down is not part of the adventure. It's just cumbersome and it's tedious and tiring, and it really drains the morale, I think. Especially when it happens, a whole bunch. If we were in Bukhara for 8 days waiting on car stuff, think about all the other time we've spent half days at garages getting things done. We've probably spent, I would say, no less than 12 or 13 days.
Time blown and waiting for car repairs.
Easily, if not more than 2 weeks. On a 2-month trip, that to me doesn't add to the adventure. The camping and the climbing the mountains and driving through the deserts of Iran and driving on the Palmyra Highway, that's all the adventure to me. But spending time being broken down, not so much. But again, this is what we signed up for and that we've accepted the terms to. So we knew that there was a high potential that this could all happen, and it did. And here we are.
I'm Scott Gurian. I'm a longtime public radio and print reporter, and I've created this podcast called Far From Home to document the unexpected adventures and chance encounters I have with interesting people around the world. To start off, I'm telling the story of a massive road trip my brother and I took with our friends, raising money for charity. We drove nearly 11,000 miles.
11,000?
That's right, a quarter of the way around the Earth, from London to Mongolia, through 18 countries, 8 time zones, 5 mountain ranges, and a few deserts, in a ridiculously tiny car.
It's like the Beverly Hillbillies.
It's not for the faint of heart.
It's the adventure, isn't it? It's just the thing of pushing yourself to the absolute limit, because I think it's going to take us out of our comfort zone, but in a really good way.
If you're just joining me, I suggest you first go back and listen to all the previous episodes in order to get up to speed and for all of this to make a bit more sense. From language barriers to car trouble, getting horribly lost to paying bribes to shady traffic cops, it's been quite an amazing experience, and over the coming episodes, I'll be bringing all of you along with me for the ride. It was one of those days that seemed to last forever. You'll remember from the last episode that we'd woken up shivering and suffering from altitude sickness after camping out in the mountains. Our car wouldn't run, so we'd wasted hours waiting for people to tow us, and then when we finally got to a garage, the engine miraculously started. We'd successfully faced down our latest mechanical scare, but our unexpected delays had put us way behind schedule once again, so now we were trying to make up time, mindful of the fact that there was no way of knowing quite how far our car would last. Plus, every hill was stressful, since we never knew if we'd make it to the top. Thankfully, after driving a few more hours, we managed to get to the small town of Murghab just as dusk was approaching. The guy at the front desk of the only hotel in town apologized that he'd just rented the last dorm-style room to an itinerant Chinese laborer, but Rosie managed to sweet-talk the hotel clerk into moving the guy into another room with some Swedish tourists to make space for the four of us. While he worked things out, we headed down the hall to the hotel's crowded restaurant to grab some dinner. Amid all our car troubles, we'd had very little to eat all day, so we were looking forward to finally getting some food in our stomachs. Drew toasted our arrival.
Anyway, cheers, we've made it. Cheers. Without warm, sweet beer.
Unfortunately, we'd showed up at the tail end of the dinner time rush, so there was only one thing left on the menu.
So this is the fried meat of the yak.
Oh, okay.
So you ready to try fried meat of the yak?
Looking forward to trying this. With onion.
With onion.
She's going to be delightful to smell.
Luckily, they were able to prepare a vegetarian option for my brother and me.
Cabbage soup, which they've generously taken the yak meat out of for us.
I tried some.
It is actually quite tasty soup. It's good to finally have a hearty meal.
As we ate, we discussed this strange place in which we now found ourselves.
So what are your first impressions of this town?
Harsh and bleak were adjectives that came to my mind. If you do a Google search for Murghab, you'll come across people describing it as post-apocalyptic and the worst place in the world. Isolated as it was, it felt like the final frontier, or as Rosie and Jane described it,
the end of the earth. The end of the earth.
Yeah. Because all these like white concrete houses felt almost like I'd imagine an Alaskan fishing village or something to be.
An Alaskan fishing village would look much prettier than this, Jane muttered. Rosie added that most of the places that looked like this we passed straight through. We noticed that the people here looked rugged and had wind-burnt features, probably as a result of the harsh climate here in the mountains, and they looked much more East Asian than the people we'd seen in other parts of the country. But I guess that was to be expected, given that the Chinese border was now just 60 miles away. They also wore these four-sided white felt domed hats. After finishing dinner, we sat around nursing our Russian beers and discussing our predicament. According to what the last mechanic had told us, our car's prognosis seemed pretty bad, so we didn't know what to do. You see, we'd embarked on this journey fully intending that we would all make it to the finish line together, but as Rosie noted, that plan now seemed unlikely.
I just don't want to not finish.
I don't want to not finish, she said, but I'm desperately trying to think how we can achieve it.
I just don't know if it's realistic to think that we could finish it with the four of us. It doesn't seem like it, you know?
We bounced around the idea again of figuring out a way to downsize our gear so the four of us could squeeze in with Rosie and Jane if our car ended up going kaput, but that didn't seem very doable. Drew suggested that the two of them might just have to continue without us.
Like, personally, I would rather see the two of you be able to finish. I mean, I know it's going to be different. I know that.
Rosie started tearing up.
Oh. But seriously, I just don't know if it's feasible.
We really don't want you to feel guilty. Just stop worrying about us.
I don't feel guilty.
No?
There's no guilt.
No.
There's no guilt involved in it at all.
Okay.
I'd feel pretty guilty if the two of you didn't finish because of us. Honestly. I mean, you're probably not going to do this again.
What makes you think that?
No, I mean, Rosie, you
Very
did say that
set
yourself.
with, I'm
You
never
said
gonna
that.
do this again.
Well, you said
No, of
because
course
you're.
I'm not gonna do it.
Yeah.
But given our younger ages, Drew argued that he and I would have more opportunities in the future. So, although it would certainly be unfortunate if the two of us had to end our trip early and fly home, it wouldn't necessarily be the worst thing in the world. That said, we weren't prepared to do that just yet. I mean, sure, we were feeling fairly pessimistic about our ability to carry on, but after coming this far, there's no way we were just going to give up, pack our bags, and leave until we'd exhausted all other possibilities.
So, what are you thinking then?
I say we drive as far as we can.
Keep going.
I didn't think I was going to make it here today, to be honest with you. I really didn't.
Against all odds, we'd continue pushing our luck and taking it a day at a time.
If it does break, where do we go from there? What do we do? I don't know.
We hit the road early the following day, unsure of how far we'd be able to make it. Our steady stream of mechanical problems had left us feeling frustrated and bitter. So as we drove by a cliff, my brother joked that it would be fun to put a rock on the accelerator and let the car drive itself off the edge. But then we had a change of heart and realized that perhaps we shouldn't be so mean to this vehicle that had already carried us 7,000 miles. After being told that our car was on its last legs, our expectations were pretty low. And in the midst of it all came our biggest challenge yet, climbing to the top of the Akbaital Pass, the highest point of our entire journey. The timing couldn't have been worse, and we hardly felt prepared. It was basically like coming down with pneumonia and then being asked to run a marathon. Drew shifted into first gear and pushed the pedal to the floor, but our poor car simply didn't have the power to make it up the steep incline.
This car's really struggling. Rosie and Jane are really struggling too, but their car's doing better than ours. We're really pushing these cars with these 1-liter engines, and we're so close to the top. If we could make it, I'll be so happy.
Jane was much more adept at driving stick than either of us, so she offered to give it a shot. By alternating back and forth between applying gas and stepping on the clutch, she slowly managed to make the climb, a few feet at a time.
Okay, look at that. Wow. Gotta wait up for me. I'm walking behind them. Oh man, it's chilly up here and windy. Look at this. This is the closest we've been to snow-capped mountains. It's just slightly higher than we are. I don't think I've ever been up this high. Okay, I made it to the top. It wasn't that far of a walk, but it's probably a really bad idea at this altitude. My gosh, I'm so out of breath.
Jane said she'd offered reassuring words to our car on the trip up.
So, come on, girl, you can do it.
I'm very impressed.
Yeah, that was amazing. Thank you.
Now that we were at the top, I checked the altimeter.
15,311 feet.
Yes! Yeah! We're on top of the world! We are on top of the world! Get in there! The babies did it, you little girlie.
Yesterday, I did not think that we would be standing here today.
Very proud of our cars, especially ours. And we've just descended from the mountain and we've had our first yak sighting. Big black hairy thing with horns and just kind of minding his own business, eating the grass.
It was like a sweater with legs.
I think it's a bunch of his yak buddies out in the field there.
Yeah.
We drove through a snow-covered valley and past a brilliant blue lake where we stopped to take some photos. Then the terrain got rougher.
So we are driving now on Tajikistan's infamous washboard roads. If you picture a washboard with all the bumps, it's exactly like what we're on right now. This cannot be good for the shocks. I'll be so glad when this is paved again.
What?
I said I'll be so glad when this is paved again.
Ever since we left the UK, we'd been heading east, first across Europe and then Asia. But after reaching Murghab, we'd turned north To the right of the road was a barbed wire fence that portioned off a wide strip of no man's land separating us from the Chinese border, which was at this point just 12 miles away. As I've mentioned before, it's pretty complicated and expensive for foreigners to drive through China, so we'd be spending the next few days going hundreds of miles out of our way to detour around it. You could think of it as a nuisance, but then again, taking the shortest and most direct route to Mongolia was never our goal. On a rocky hilltop in the middle of nowhere, we came to the border station to exit Tajikistan. We filled out a bunch of paperwork and shuffled between several buildings, including one where a guy was cooking a meal of peppers, onions, and yak meat over a potbelly stove. It smelled wonderful. Then we descended the mountain and entered Country 15, Kyrgyzstan. Kyrgyzstan was a total tease. With its gentle grass fields, yurts, and horses, it at first seemed serene and pastoral. We descended from the heights, and our car seemed to be driving better. After the incredibly rough terrain in Tajikistan, it looked like we were finally going to get a break, but the road started going up again, and our luck changed. Just one mountain after another we keep climbing up, and they're pretty steep. It's just winding like crazy back and forth with all these switchbacks.
This is an absolutely brutal climb. So demanding on this car.
It wasn't supposed to be this way, but we had a slight navigational issue that snowballed into a much bigger problem. You see, the smoothest and most direct route from southern to northern Kyrgyzstan would have been to head due north, but that involved crossing back over a little finger of Uzbekistan that was sticking out in our direction. We didn't want to go through the hassle of making another border crossing, though, so we looked at our paper maps and decided on a small detour. We'd go about 40 miles east to circumvent Uzbekistan, then turn west again on the other side. Unfortunately, when we plugged our destination into our phones, Google Maps routed us a completely different way, and somehow none of us noticed until it was far too late. Basically, there was a point where we should have turned left, but our GPS instead sent us to the right, and that wrong turn put us several hours out of our way. How long have we been driving so far?
Right now it's 5 o'clock. Just 6.5 hours so far.
So basically we were told it was going to be a 10 to 12 hour drive. We made a wrong turn, so now it's 16-hour drive or something?
Something like that, which isn't completely doable today.
Yeah, this has been like hundreds of kilometers we've been on this road. It seems like it's never going to end. So basically at this point, I don't think there's any way we can make it to Bishkek this evening. We're trying to look at a map and figure out where to stay, but it's tough because we've been behind schedule as it is, and now we're even more behind schedule. We're basically maybe adding an extra day to our travel. From breaking down to getting lost, we were now getting used to experiencing the unexpected. We plan out routes on the map, but it's so hard to kind of get an accurate understanding of how long it will actually take. You know, so many unknowns.
You can't expect to know, and that's the thing about this. I mean, I know Rosie is probably pretty unhappy at the moment because she feels like it's her fault for not getting us to the right road, but it's not at all.
It's not just this, though, I'm saying. It's like many things, you know?
Of course. It's all flying by the seat of your pants, and it's really just winging it and taking it one day at a time, and that's really all we can do at this point. I'm okay with that. I enjoy that aspect of it, but it can be frustrating. I can understand that as well. I think if you really have a stringent time schedule and you need to have an exact plan, don't do the Mongol Rally, honestly. Drive through Europe where the roads are great and you're not going to have any car problems, but don't expect to drive in the Pamir Highway and not have issues.
In a crappy used car. Yeah.
A car isn't crappy. We have to stop saying that. We need to be nice to her until we're finished.
The one piece of good news was that throughout it all, our car somehow managed to hang in there without ever stalling or overheating. Eventually, the evening came, and we drove down from the mountains on the other side. So we are...
Where are we?
We are in the hamlet of Akya, Akkyyya, Kyrgyzstan. I'm guessing population 35 people, 47 goats, 53 sheep, and 5 yaks. And so, yeah, this is pretty much the only town in this area.
Is this the road?
We could turn up here. I mean, I think this goes kind of into town. We could go and look, I suppose. I'm secretly hoping someone will see us and take pity on us and welcome us into their house.
Suffice to say, there wasn't a Holiday Inn.
Everyone we're driving by is looking at us really weird. They've probably never seen anything like this in their town, because we clearly don't fit in here. Well, I'm sure no foreigners ever come here.
We went from one side of Akyat to the other, which took all of about 3 minutes, but it was hard to find a place to stop. Rosie spoke up on the radio.
My feeling is it's always better to be sort of on the outskirts of town rather than smack bang in the middle, because, you know, we do need to be able to go to the loo, and if we're too close to people's houses, there's dogs, there's children.
Sure, understood. So, you think we should make a left here?
Let's take a left and then try and find somewhere to just pull off so we're not on the main road enough to be out of town, so that we're not a novelty act.
Okay.
You guys planning on being in the car or setting up a tent?
I mean, I think we've got to stay in the car. It's kind of weird to just set up a tent in someone's neighborhood.
There was also the fact that Rosie had read us something from her guidebook earlier about there being lots of wolves in this area. After driving around for a bit, we finally settled on a spot.
I suppose we could just pull over our cars right here.
Yeah, I think this is it. This works. It's what we have.
Rosie and Jane walked over.
Maybe the villagers will come out and bring us breakfast in the morning.
Yeah.
There's probably a Dunkin' Donuts for breakfast. We can grab some coffees.
It had been another really long day.
Right, Drew, are you going to make us one of your infamous peanut butter sandwiches for dinner?
There's no more crackers.
Unless you want it on a pizza cracker.
We could cook pasta right here in this little area. We can set up the stove.
No, it takes too long, Jane said. I want to go to sleep.
How about you two, though? I mean, you must be starving.
We're hungry. I know I'm hungry. I don't know about you.
I mean, we've been eating a little bit, but what do we have?
We've got pot noodles.
Is that the thing you add hot water to?
Yeah,
We still need to boil water.
we do.
If you're going to boil water, you might as well just make pasta, right?
Yeah, that's true.
We can survive as well.
We have some almonds and dates and things, you know.
Not only were we hungry, but we were also filthy from all the dirt our cars had kicked up during the long journey. Without air conditioning, we had to keep our windows open to stay cool, so everyone was now covered with a layer of grime.
Bless you. You okay there?
It's bloody dust.
I know.
It's infiltrated every pore, every
I know.
orifice, everything. It's just vile.
Returning to the matter at hand, Jane reminded us that it was already 9 o'clock, so if we started cooking now, we probably wouldn't get to bed for another hour and a half. While we were hungry, we also needed a good night's sleep, given that we were planning on hitting the road at daybreak to make up for lost time, so a formal meal would have to wait. My brother and I started getting out our sleeping bags.
So, Drew, what's for dinner?
Pizza-flavored crackers with peanut butter.
Sounds delicious.
It's going to be great. It's the perfect mix of sweet and savory. Only the best.
We're going to make do with what we have.
Rosie came back over to our car.
Just a reminder, lock your doors.
Yeah, for sure.
You probably would have done that.
Yep.
Okay, sleep tight.
If you go to farfromhomepodcast.org, you could see some photos of the four of us celebrating reaching the highest point of our journey, and also a map of the route we were supposed to take versus the one we ended up taking in Kyrgyzstan. You know, GPS can be a great and useful tool on an ordinary road trip. There are some parts of the world that it's just not equipped to handle. I'm thrilled to announce that 3 different episodes of this show, where I documented our experiences driving across Iran and Turkmenistan, recently won awards from the Garden State Journalists Association. Thanks to all of you for your support. Next time on Far From Home, we check out the wild foliage in Kazakhstan.
We were driving down the road and I saw these plants out the window that looked like some pictures I've seen once. And here we are sitting in front of a bunch of marijuana plants.
And
If there's a single country since we left Europe where we've not been in the mechanics.
Kyrgyzstan.
Really?
Yeah. We got through Kyrgyzstan, okay. I thought we broke the curse, but now we're back again.
I've said it from the beginning, but I want to thank the Public Radio Exchange for hosting my podcast and taking care of all the behind-the-scenes technical stuff so I can focus on creating this show. There are so many great podcasts out there right now, so if you need some help finding other shows you might like, check out the Radio Public app in Google Play or the Apple App Store, and you'll be forever grateful. And if you enjoy listening to Far From Home, please spread the word on whatever social media you use with the hashtag FarFromHomePodcast. If you have a moment, please also leave me a rating or review in the Apple Podcast app, because it really does help. Until next time, thanks for listening.
I'm gonna message Dad in the satellite and tell him that we're parked on the side of the road because we got horribly lost, and we'll lock our doors to protect ourselves from the wolves. He'll feel great about that.